welcome to Digital Transformation Survivors. I'm your host, Julian Tedstone, and I'm here to talk to you about everything to do with managing complex web estates. So this is where you've got lots of different audience members looking at lots of different types of application or content or communication. And we're here to learn from the survivors, learn from the people who have got strategies for dealing with that kind of challenge. And I am so excited today because we have got Dr. Jonathan Sykes with you. So,
call me John. Call me John. Otherwise, I think you're like going to be like a parent telling me off or something.
Well, I was going to be my opening gambit, John. It was going to be what is it? Is it Dr. Sykes? Is it Dr. Jonathan Sykes or Dr. John?
Just John. Just John. Honestly, I had my background's in gaming, and for a while people used to call me Dr. Fun, which is a little bit of a weird one there, but yeah, I'm not sure if that's an ironic
there we go, ladies and gentlemen. On Digital Transformation Survivors this morning, we have Dr. Fun. So a little bit of background for John. So started off a career in academia, established Emotion Labs in Glasgow, conducted groundbreaking research into human-computer interaction, worked with major tech companies like Microsoft to enhance user emotional engagement, then transitioned into UK public sector, where he's led some amazing transformation programs across local government organisations like National Highways, and most recently the Foreign Commonwealth Office, where he is now the what's your title? It's an amazing title.
I've just finished there. So my title is Global Head of AI Products. So I'm working for a company called Caution Your Blast, which is who I was contracting through for the Foreign Office. So I'm helping them at the moment productize some of their AI work for governments and working at how we're going to commercialize that across the globe.
Amazing.
So it really is exciting.
And you were responsible, I think, for one of the first chat services for UK government.
Oh, don't call it chat. Yes. We delivered the first customer-facing AI solution for government, and then I don't know if you want to launch into that straight away, but that is because we developed what I'm calling government-grade AI. It's AI that doesn't suffer from the impacts of hallucination. You can imagine the Foreign Office, for example. I mean, government itself is conservative, but when you think about the Foreign Office, it's probably the most conservative of a conservative bunch of organizations. And the risk of reputation for saying the wrong thing or being, you can imagine a rogue agent wanting to try and hack with prompts, make it say something that would embarrass the government. We couldn't entertain that. So we had to develop a strict approach to AI and developed our own approach, which means that basically it cannot hallucinate. It can't. Not saying it can't hallucinate. It can't. There is no impact of any hallucination. So there may be some hallucination that happens in the background, but it can't impact what you see in terms of a user. So your response. So it's actually for consular services at the Foreign Office. So if you go abroad and you get into trouble, what you'll find is you want to reach out to government. That is the Foreign Office. So that is the consular services. So if you lose your passport, if you knocked down, if you end up in prison, then it's the consular services that you're going to reach out to. And they typically try and look after 500,000 plus inquiries each year, which is huge. And they've got an army of people based out in Malaga, and they've started to move into Glasgow to East Kilbride. And and they can actually maintain that and look after that most of the year. But during the summer months, it gets a bit tight. Lots of people going on holiday, as I say, losing the passport, getting into trouble. Add on top of that crises such as Gaza, for example, then it becomes really hard to manage all of that incoming inquiries. And you find that during that time, written inquiries particularly will be pushed back. So it could take up to 10 days to get response to a written inquiry, which is not great if you're sitting there going, get me out of here, please. So we looked at the data, and we looked at who's inquiring and what they're inquiring about, and identified that like 65% of people actually are asking questions that they could have self-served on it, only they were pointing in the right direction. So we built a triage service, a front door, effectively, to consular services, which um, very quickly got to the nut of what you're looking for. So if you are in an emergency situation, we get you the phone number straight away. Make sure you're on a call, speaking to somebody who can help you. If you're able to self-serve, and there's a service there for you, we quickly get you to the start of that service, so you can get your passport straight away, your replacement passport, your emergency travel document is what we call it. If you fall in between, we send you down the route of written inquiries. And then, as I say, we have this AI tool that fundamentally what it does is it reads your inquiry, understands what you're trying to achieve, and then sends you a response. And what we've managed to do is reduce the workload by 80% in terms of written inquiries. And that whole actual process has reduced telephone inquiries by about 50% if they come through that route too. So humongous success. And also to find a way where we could be confident of what we're doing in terms of AI, in terms of the responses that we give, making sure that the vulnerable are looked after as well, that they're still getting the same getting looked after in exactly the same way as they were before. The responses coming from the AI are exactly the same responses they would have come from an individual. And if you're not happy with the response you get from the AI, you can either resubmit another query, or you can say, please send this to a human being, and they'll get back to you a lot quicker now, because they're dealing with a lot less responses. And it's been great. I mean, not just in terms of user. I mean, you're no longer waiting 10 days. You're getting a response back in about 3 seconds. But in terms of staff, now they've got a lot more breathing space. It wasn't about trying to reduce the number of staff. What it was about is trying to cater for those variances over the year. So now we've found that staff have a bit more breathing space to respond to those vulnerable people, and they're getting a lot more positive comments back, which is great. They're feeling better because they're actually, getting good feedback. But also, there's less reopening of cases, so they don't have to reply over and over again. They can just reply once and make sure that the person's happy. So it's a really, really good, happy story. I think when we looked at it, we were hoping that we might get like 65% written inquiries resolved by AI. To get 80% is just beyond our imagination. We did not expect that. And it's also great because it means you get an answer in 3 seconds. You go, oh, well, I've got another query while I'm here then. And what's really interesting actually is if you look at what they're doing, they don't, when you write an inquiry, you don't usually just ask one question in that message. You usually have a handful of questions you've got embedded in there. So what we use AI for is kind of, what are these questions I'm asking about? Let's pull those out and let's respond to those individually and help people on their journey. And that's what we do. It's great. And if they are if the written inquiries implies, oh my God, no, actually these are in a vulnerable situation, we get them straight to the phone number again. So it's not about trying to stop people from calling. It's trying to find you the right channel based on your situation.
I think that's a key insight into how you use AI in those situations, because you're very much using it as a support to the human process, to the support to human communication, rather than as a replacement to it. So I think there's a really good lesson there in how you get the most out of that technology.
And the reason it works is because it's bedded into a service. There's proper service design that underpins that, and the AI comes in as a way of basically triaging the next level down. So AI is not the technology. We didn't come in and say, right, we need AI. We're going to put AI in here. I kind of technology agnostic. I bizarrely ended up on a team, leading a team, bringing in the first AI into government. But I'm not like a massive AI advocate. For me, tech is a tool, and you use the right tool based on the situation in hand. And in this particular instance, it was a great tool, and I'd use it again for sure. It has huge opportunity to reduce efficiency, but in doing so, there's lots of we were running ethical workshops on a regular basis, having to bring teams in. We had to think about how we're using the data in a slightly different way. You can't be having very personal queries being sent to ChatGPT with personal identifiable information. There's lots of extra pieces of work we had to think about as part of that process. We don't train the AI on any of the data to make it better. A lot of the training is, well, it's not training, but getting the accuracy is actually done in the back end. We have a lot of work with the team over in Malaga, going, oh, you gave this query, you responded in this way to this inquiry, but we responded this way. Which was the right answer? And they said, oh, well, actually, you got it wrong there, because although they said that, what they're probably meaning is this, because they said that and that. And you go, oh, so you can't just, the rules aren't always obvious. And we spent a lot of time actually going through all the different queries that have historically been coming in and looking at the kinds of terms they're using, the language, where they're coming from, what they're trying to achieve, all of that. There's a little investigation, there's a little Sherlock Holmes in the background going, based on all of that, I can see where they came from, I see what time they did it, I see what they're asking about. They haven't quite got the detail there, but I think they must be talking about this. Therefore, this is your response. So we really had to go to town on that. And that was a really useful part of that whole process. We spent probably, the bulk of our work is actually getting everything under the hood working so that it works exactly as a human does. And we had no flow charts. We have no, this kind of information is bedded into people's brains and they don't even know they know it. So the only way we could think of doing it was actually going, look, here's a response. You said X, we said Y, which one's right? And over time, actually the AI was more often correct than sometimes the human beings. So we actually got the response accuracy at that level to be the same. But what we give in terms of a response to a human being is always 100% accurate because it's pre-rendered. There is no, we don't use Gen AI to create the text. We just use it for the understanding of the prompt and the query in the first place.
So there's a lot there that we could talk about all day. I'm gonna zoom in on one thing you mentioned there, and that's, you mentioned the process of service design.
Yes,
you're really seeing the technology really just as a tactic, I suppose, but service design is at the heart of it. And I guess in the kind of the, what's known as the web digital experience world, there are a number of different ways of trying to work out how well something is performing. So you can use conversion rate optimization to look at a specific journey. And the fact that we're using the word journey means that we're presupposing it's something that's linear, that people start at one end and they end up at the end of a process, hopefully with some kind of purchase, or there's at the kind of the digital customer optimization or the digital experience optimization view, where you take a scorecard of different metrics, you take the qualitative data and quantitative data, and you bring it all together to see how you're doing. And I think all of these techniques help technologists and marketers to evaluate how well their technology is performing to different communities, different audiences with different needs or different intents. I think this is where we're getting to. I'm really curious to understand how the service design approach modifies this or learns from this, or maybe I've completely misunderstood the mechanic. But talk to me about service design. How does that help you?
I thought you were leading me on to metrics. Let me talk about metrics.
Well, yeah,
because I think the metrics is how we measured this was quite interesting. So if you think about it, we're looking after the whole of the world. There's 220 plus consulates around the world, and that's how we engage with other governments, but it's also how we engage with people who are abroad. What we did during our private beta was we released the tool to just a handful of countries. We chose some countries where they had multiple consulates in the same country. So we trialed it with Germany, Greece, and then France, and eventually Spain. Spain's got quite a large number of users. So save that for the latter part of the private beta once we felt very comfortable that the technology was working as we predicted. And we chose those countries because they had multiple consulates within the same country. So what we couldn't do was have a look and go, okay, how are our phone calls now, how are our written inquiries now compared to last year? Because last year there could have been any number of different events going on, and it makes no sense to look at the temporal issues. And also, over the years things do change. So what we've done is we actually looked at two consulates in the same country. One which we used the new triage tool, the new front door into triage, and the other one was hadn't been touched, vanilla, exactly as it was before. And that allowed us to look at the figures for those particular countries and have a look and go, okay, we can see written inquiries has dropped considerably. The phone numbers not quite so much. Okay, let's go back. Is there an issue? Are people going along the right journey? We had a number of different tools that allowed us to see what people were looking at in terms of their choices on a screen. And we could see, for example, we had to make sure that the vulnerable people were seen really, really quickly. So we really wanted the top line of the options to be getting you to the phone call. But what we didn't want to do is get everybody to the phone call. And you think, okay, that's straightforward. Emergency calls go there. But what's an emergency to you and I is not what is necessarily an emergency to the Foreign Office. So if you think you've lost your passport, you're traveling home in 2 days, that is an emergency to me. To the Foreign Office, well, no, we've got a service like there. If you can just go on, put in your details, we'll get you your emergency travel document to get you home, and that should be with you in 2 days. We don't want you to phone up for that, actually, because we've got a great online journey that'll take you through that, hold your hand. And actually, if you do that, if you phone up, all we're going to do is point you to that in the first place. You're taking up response time. So by having a look at the data that's coming in, working out where the problems are occurring, it allowed us to then go back and we took it back through a series of user research to try and get some kind of understanding of what was happening. And from that, we were able to make, usually, this is where content design really made a big difference, actually, is trying to find exactly the right terms and use. I mean, most people don't know what consular means. We've got, on this particular page, we're trying to direct people from consular inquiries into one route and what we're calling general inquiries to another. And trying to find those right words, articulate the right journey, and make sure, because if you go on the wrong path, it takes a long time to get you back into the right space. So if you send an inquiry to general inquiries, that means it's going to the local consulate. But actually, it's the team in Spain who need to respond to you, and therefore it's more complicated to transfer people onto a different channel than you'd believe, actually. So that they were the real challenges. It's that service design, it's the content design, it's bringing it all together. The AI bit, the easy bit. I think I said to you right when we started talking about this, I said, you know what? I do digital transformation all the time. I've been doing it for years, and I love it. But the technology is the easy bit. The AI, that just worked. It was great. We had a few interesting challenges at the beginning to work out our methodology, the architecture, how it's going to work. It was people were the biggest issue, helping people understand what we were doing, why we're doing it, why it was secure. Even tech teams, we had to go through a lot of extra committees to convince them that this solution was not going to be leaving the Foreign Office in a vulnerable situation. We had to convince them, show them, our approach, our architecture, what we had in terms of security, how our data was being used. We had to convince a lot of people at that level. But at the same time, you had a lot of stakeholders within the Foreign Office and also based in those different countries who are very used to a different. They all had different ideas. They thought, oh, you're basically coming in here because you want to try and reduce the number of calls coming in. You're trying to make the service worse. And we're going, no, we're not. We're trying to make sure that based on your need, we are fulfilling your need efficiently so that if you're able to self-serve, please do. And often you want to self-serve if you can. It's just, honestly, GovUK is not the best place to try and get the information, to try and find your way, especially if you look at how you end up jumping into GovUK. So typically you're writing something into Google, your query, and it'll drop you in. And you're not necessarily at the top of the tree. So therefore you can be dropped into a page and you go, I don't really understand this. And you work your way through it. And it, very quickly you think, I saw this, I'm giving up. Oh, and if there's a phone number there, you'll call it. So what we were able to do is, direct people to the top of a tree so they understood the journey as they find the service they want as well. So yeah, really was about service design. It really was about bringing together the UX elements. It's about user research. It was about service design. It was about content design. All the good principles, which, I don't know, I sometimes wonder if companies still value it. I do feel the UX industry seems getting a bit of hit at the moment. If you look at the amount of people unemployed and the lack of jobs, you're thinking, are companies really not appreciating what those professions really deliver for them in terms of transformation? And that's what worries me probably most.